This is Qtv News. I am Maria Masani and thanks for joining us. First, the main local, international and sports news headlines. We hear from Red Cross and the ferry authorities over a dispute about whether Red Cross vehicles on burial duty should pay to cross. The Gambia soon be ahead of the likes of Germany when it comes to making voting easy for the visually impaired. As the rain season settles in, we go to URR to see how farmers are coping. Bakau Fish Market is being demolished to make way for another. Some vendors are unhappy about the short notice they say they were giving to relocate. In international news, Israel and UAE sign a deal some are describing as historic, but not everyone's happy about it. And Namibia's government rejects a cash offer from Germany regarding the atrocities in the country when Germany was occupying power. Is it about more than money? In sports news, the sports manager and head of the football academy at Q City tells QTV how COVID-19 has impacted the academy's plans. Those were the main headlines, and now the news in details. Stay tuned. In local news, the Secretary General of Gambia Red Cross Society has revealed his frustration and anger over the insistence by ferry authorities that burial vehicles must pay before crossing. Babukar C has the rest of that story.
In a frustrated and disappointed tone, Secretary General Senghor stressed that authorities, both in the private and public sector, should understand the importance of the work of the Red Cross, especially at this time of crisis. The Red Cross boss said the ferry authorities in Bara denied their burial team and its vehicle permission to cross with the last ferry when they just arrived from a COVID-19 burial in the North Bank region. According to the SG, this delayed their work on Thursday, with some families having to wait until 2 p.m. to start their burial activity.
We crossed the ferry, went to the North Bank to do a burial. On their way back, they were asked to park the vehicle on one side. And then they loaded the ferry and they left. Now, this is unacceptable. You know, these are volunteers who are serving humanity. These are volunteers who are on PPEs. It's hot, and there is a time limit to when you can be in that PPE. And it's unacceptable. So for me, we are asking for everybody to cooperate. I mean, these people were not driving any luxury car. They were on a government pickup with their PPEs and everything. And they passed through the ferry going up north. When they were coming back, they should have been left to go through. They should have been the first one to be on the ferry. This is a priority, and this is unacceptable. For me, it is unacceptable because first and foremost, it's a national duty. Secondly, it's everybody's obligation to support, because you don't know who is going to be next. We are in a pandemic and everything has to be mobilized.
When contacted to respond to the claims, the Deputy Managing Director of the Ferry Services, Hali Abdullah Gai, said the ferry services is very supportive to all, especially in time of emergencies. He, however, was quick to emphasize that all vehicles, both private and public, should pay a crossing fee. Gai said the working hours have changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, anybody, including the Red Cross handling any emergency situation, should notify the management earlier for easy facilitation of their crossing. In another news, the Secretary General of the Gambia Red Cross Society has also addressed recent rumors circulating, including on social media, that the Red Cross have asked people to pay them money before they render any services. Secretary General Senghor categorically denied the accusations.
All the services that the Red Cross is offering is free of charge. We are not asking for a cent from anybody. These people who are offering these services are volunteers, and they are doing it on their own free will. All we give them allowance for their food, and that is all. We are doing fumigation, public places, institutions, homes, free of charge. We are not asking for any payment, and let that be clear to all Gambians. If somebody wants to donate to that cause, you donate through the Red Cross directly to our accounts, and then we account for the monies that were donated. If you want to buy material and equipment to donate, fine. We appreciate that. But we are not charging for anything because we are not a commercial entity. We are a humanitarian, and we are delivering services to the Gambians.
The Gambia Red Cross Society continues to be in the forefront in serving the country voluntarily, as enshrined in their motto, to help one another and to serve the sick and suffering. The burial team have so far buried 76 COVID-19 positive and suspected cases as of Thursday, 13th August 2020. Babu Karsi, Qtv News.
With a shift from the traditional marble voting system to using paper ballots in the much-anticipated upcoming 2021 general elections in the Gambia, our Amar Pejalo find out from election officials the modalities in place to cater for the visually impaired people to take part, and he filed in this report.
Following the long-awaited electoral reform in the Gambia, the country is due to introduce paper ballot system for the first time in the coming 2021 general election. According to Electoral Commission officials, the change in the voting system was triggered by an increase in the number of registered political parties, an expected surge in voter turnout, and a move towards modernization to match international standards, thereby making the humble marble system unreliable and outdated.
We're working towards making sure that we don't break the laws, as you said. The calendar is out. I mean, we're starting with the registration of voters, which is scheduled for January. And then June we have the referendum and then the presidential elections, in 2021. So as I said earlier on, we're working towards that. And we're hoping and praying that, this pandemic, which is a global phenomenon, will subside and give us the chance to go on with our exercise.
In an interview with QTV, Joseph Colley, the IEC Director of Training and Communication, said the Commission has provided appropriate supplementary support and service to provide voters with disability an equal opportunity to participate in a manner that protects their privacy and independence.
They've always been exercising their franchise, though, over the years, they've been helped, to vote. But with the migration from marbles to ballot paper, they'll be able to vote for themselves, because that's what is called tactile. We all know that they use braille, so the ballot paper will be designed in such a way that once they touch it and feel it, they will know exactly the person that they want to vote for. So what we're doing in the reforms is just to help, because to help them, or to give them the right, so that they can vote for themselves instead of being helped.
Colley went on to describe the paper ballot voting system as more transparent, credible and cheaper compared to the marble system, and disclosed that the new electoral reform could also allow Gambians in the diaspora to participate in the country's electoral process for the first time, in line with the laws of the land.
I want to vote for Party X and Party B. So depending on the way the person is genuine or frank, then maybe who knows, sometimes what happens. So the person will say, I want to vote for A, and then maybe it's put in box Y or something like that. But this time around, there will not be, something like that. They'll be able to take care of themselves.
This week in Germany, Corina May, a one-time Eurovision contestant, lost a court case in Bremen after she had trouble voting in a local election. May normally use a postal vote, a common and straightforward option in German. But she ran out of time to mail her ballot. So she decided simply to vote in person. At the polling station, she asked if she could bring her husband into the voting booth with her, but was told that this is not allowed. She declined an assistant from among the electoral officers, saying that this will compromise her privacy. In the end, May did not vote at all. The new development in the Gambia will also help the country to combine elections in the future. For instance, presidential and National Assembly election could be held on the same date. The marble-in-drum voting system was first introduced in the Gambia in the run-up to the 1960 general elections, the first time ballots of any kind had been used in the country. At the time, it was believed that the marble voting system was the best choice for two reasons. Firstly, the majority of the electorates were illiterate and found it difficult to vote on paper. Secondly, the general perception was that this system provides greater security against electoral fraud. The Gambia has 7 administrative regions, 53 constituencies, 120 wards, 15 political parties, 1,422 polling stations, and 886,578 registered voters. Some had wanted the marble system to remain, but logic, fairness, and modernization appear to have put paid to that. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar Pijalo.
Since the rain season started, there had been talk of how farmers are coping this year. In our quest to get first-hand information, we traveled by motorbike to crisscross the Upper River region, meeting farmers in their farms to discuss the challenges and expectations of this year's farming season amidst COVID-19. And Alhaji A.F. Jalo reports.
Agriculture is the most important sector of the economy, contributing 32% of the GDP, providing employment and income for an estimated 80% of the population and accounting for 70% of the country's foreign exchange earnings. During our visit to farms and gardens, we met Mr. Ajikule Kamara in Numuyel village in Jimara district. Mr. Kamara, a farmer and former chief, took us around his 300 meters by 175 meters banana plantation of more than 6,000 seedlings of different varieties. Over 25 youths and women are employed here. In the same area, Mr. Kamara showed us a 40-meter square fish pond of which 200 kilos of fish is harvested in every 3 months. Mr. Kamara stressed that this sector remains the prime sector to raise income levels for investment to improve food security and reduce poverty. However, its expansion is stifled by lack of fertilizers, poor access roads, inadequate water supply, and security, among others.
I am here at Numuyel Garden. So this garden, I started a long time. I tell the President Barrow when he came to Numuyel, the rally there, I tell him that I have banana garden in Numuyel. I put it there more than 5,000 sucker of banana here. But the evidence is on the future of you now, in the eyes of you now, you see whether it's the reality or not reality. In this world, no any country can survive without agriculture. And if we see we Africans, we are suffering, we don't put agriculture as a head of our programs. For we have to support ourselves for agriculture line to work and feed ourselves. That is, I know.
In Sarejata and elsewhere, farmers actively participate in weeding exercise during this period. Mr. Muhammadu Buaro and Mariama Jao stressed that, based on the rainfall pattern, farmers expect a bumper harvest compared to last year's rainy season, if they are supported with fertilizers at the right time.
Isengo demalhe ko sengo angere joni awawa remde dula ha laba wona tawasi wana awa angere kulle ko ndeman.
Our difficulties this moment is about fertilizers. We will always want to apply fertilizers in our farms, but we don't have the capacity. And this is what we live on every year, every season for the past decades, and it has been hampering our development. We are asking for support for the ministry to help us with fertilizers and pesticides so that we can do agriculture. You found us here at the farm. We are calling on the ministry to support us with farming inputs and pesticides, considering the difficulties of farming under this hot burning sun with my children. As a woman, life is so unbearing with me because farming is the only source of income that we have. This is what we depend on for survival. So therefore, if we are supported with farming inputs at the right time, then life will become very, very easy with us. 80% of the population of just over 2 million are dependent on agriculture for their food and income. Furthermore, the farming economy is the only means of income generation for the majority of rural families, most of whom live below the poverty line. Reporting for QTV News, I am Alhaji A.F. Jalo.
On Wednesday, the committee of the Bakau Market complained of the demolition of the Bakau Market by KMC in readiness for a new structure, saying they had not been given proper notice. Marie-Louise and Sanyang went to find out more, and here is what she found.
The Bakau Fish Market has been around for more than 22 years, but apparently has never been renovated in all that time. It is alleged that, over that period, various councillors promised the people of Bakau they would renovate the market, but failed to do so once elected. Sellers in the fish market are being relocated whilst a new market is being constructed. On Wednesday, the fish market was demolished, with the vendors having been asked to move whilst the work was in progress. However, some people in Bakau were unhappy about the way it was done, saying foodstuff on sale were soaked by the rain after the trade people were evicted. The advisor of the Bakau Market Union and the chairperson of the Bakau Market, Mr. Alaji Sanyang, claims that the notification to leave came in very late.
I received a call in the morning saying that they are demolishing the market. I came straight to the market master and asked. He told me he informed my secretary that they will start the work tomorrow. The people who sell here earn a living from what they sell. The pandemic has already impacted on our lives, and now this. They should have called us to discuss the way forward instead of coming onto us forcefully.
Usainu Sane, the Bakau Market Master KMC, said, "We are doing all it takes to make sure the job is conducted smoothly."
I pass the information to the secretary, let the secretary go on the ground and call his president with the vendors and pass the information. Let them understand there is a short notice because we are now in the rain season and everybody is complaining about the leakage of the seed. So that's the time KMC intervened to come and develop that area.
The vice president of the Bakau Market Committee, Nyimasata Kande, said, "It is painful to be asked to relocate without giving us a place to sell or carry on with our business while the work is in progress." She added, "We are not happy with the method the Lord Mayor of KMC and his team used." The public relations officer of the committee expressed his disappointment.
I have been selling in this market for 10 years now, but such a thing has never happened. How can you inform us a day before the work starts and expect us to comply? We want them to develop the market, but they should have informed us earlier so we can know what to do.
We contacted KMC to put to them the claims that the market vendors had been given insufficient time to relocate. In response, the Deputy Director of Planning at the Kanifing Municipal Council, Seku Sonko, said, "The place is not hygienic for people to occupy and sell their products. Thus, the KMC is working on renovating the entire market in phases and gave us an audio statement."
This asbestos shed needs to be replaced since it is scientifically proven that it causes cancer of the chest and lungs. This work is going on phases. This one is the phase 1. When this phase is over, we will start working on another phases. It's about 3 phases. I apologize for any inconvenience for the community or the vendors working or selling at Bakau Market.
The work on the new market is expected to take few weeks. Marie-Louise Ensanyang for QTV News.
We will go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, the news continues with international and sports news. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is QTV News. In international news, Israel and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to normalize relations, with Israel agreeing to temporarily hold off its controversial plans to annex part of the occupied West Bank. The deal was announced in a surprise statement by the U.S. President Donald Trump. Lolly M. Camara has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump is said to have helped broker the deal, which both countries call an historic and a breakthrough towards peace. Until this deal, Israel has had no diplomatic relations with the Gulf Arab countries. the Palestinian leaders were reportedly taken by surprise. A spokesman for President Mahmoud Abbas also said the deal amounted to treason and said that the Palestinian ambassador to UAE was being recalled. Since the declaration of independence of the State of Israel and after deals with Egypt and Jordan, the deal is only the third Israel-Arab peace deal. And President Trump has called it a truly historic moment between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi. In fact, since its founding in 1948, the State of Israel has grown in size, mainly by annexation and eviction of Palestinians, the majority of whom are Muslims. This is one reason why the deal has been greeted with surprise. Now that the ice has been broken, I expect more Arab and Muslim countries will follow the United Arab Emirates, Mr. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office, saying there would be a signing ceremony at the White House in the coming weeks. In response to President Trump's tweeted announcement, Netanyahu also wrote in Hebrew, "Historic Day." In a televised address, Netanyahu said he had delayed West Bank annexation plans, but those plans remain on the table. Annexation would make some West Bank areas officially part of Israel. As annexation is not cancelled but delayed, it is difficult to see what there is to celebrate about the deal. Mr. Netanyahu went on to say, "There is no change in my plan to apply our sovereignty to Judea and Samaria, West Bank in full coordination with the U.S. I am committed to it. That hasn't changed." Senior Trump advisor and president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, said he did not think Israel would move ahead with any annexation before discussing it first with the U.S. He said he expected to see interaction sooner between Israel and the UAE. Netanyahu said Israel would cooperate with the UAE in developing a coronavirus vaccine in energy, water, environmental protection, and many other fields. But analysts said the deal could mean a foreign policy victory for President Trump, who will seek re-election in November, and give a personal boost to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who is on trial for alleged corruption. As expected, not everyone has welcomed this deal, with Iran and Turkey leading the list of Muslim countries condemning the deal. Some Muslim countries like the UAE that are at loggerheads with Iran may be the next in line to do similar deals. Political analysts believe they are likely to do this in the belief that being Israel's friend will also make them America's friend and thus less likely to be targeted by Iran. For QTV News, Lolly M. Kamara.
The president of Namibia has rejected an offer of compensation from the German government for the mass killing of its citizens during the time the country was colonized by Germany, an era widely considered to be the first genocide of the 20th century. Marie-Louise Nsanyang reports.
On Tuesday, the German government offered the Namibian government 10 million euros, $11.7 million, but it was rejected. The two countries began its negotiations over reparations long ago, since 2015, when Germany apologized for its colonial past and offered development aid as a compensation for killing tens of thousands indigenous Herero and Nama people. The killing happened over a 4-year period from 1904 to 1908. The fight against the German colonial occupation was led by Captain Hendrik Witbooi, also known as Nama, and Samuel Maharero, both of whom are hailed as Namibian freedom fighters. Former Namibian President Sam Nujoma once gave this tribute to Witbooi.
Captain Hendrik Witbooi was the first African leader who took up arms against the German imperialists and foreign occupiers in defense of our land and territorial integrity. We, the new generation of the land of the brave, are inspired by Captain Hendrik Witbooi' revolutionary action in combat against the German imperialists who colonized and oppressed our people. To his revolutionary spirit and his visionary memory, we humbly offer our honor and respect.
Witbooi was killed on 29 October 1905 in a gunfight with the Germans near the town of Kitmansop. Many died during the fight against the colonial rule. Germany ruled the colony from 1884 to 1915. Before Namibia gained its independence in 1990, it was under South Africa for 75 years. In rejecting the latest German offer, Namibian President Haji Gengbop said the German offer needs to be revised. Among other things, he objected to the terminology used by Berlin. The current offer for reparation made by the German government remains an outstanding issue and is not acceptable for the Namibian government. He added that he took exception to the term used by Germany, healing the wounds, in place of the word reparations. In June, President Gengbop suggested that Germany would offer an unreserved apology. Berlin is yet to do so. Despite acknowledging that its colonial authorities perpetrated atrocities, Germany has repeatedly refused to pay direct reparations. Instead, pointing to the millions of euros it has given to Namibia in development aid so far. Namibia is currently one of the wealthiest and most stable countries in Africa, with its current president ruling since 2015. Marie-Louise Ensanyang for Qtv News.
And now here is the sports news. The sports manager and head of the football academy at Q City says that after a study tour to Jambar Football Academy of Mbour, Senegal, and just as they were ready to take the players to camp, COVID-19 came and forced them to put their plans on hold. Alhaji Ahmad Cham had a conversation with him.
According to Ibrahim Mane, after organizing 2 summer camps and a trip to Jambar in Mbour in Senegal, they were getting to host the players on full-time board at Q City. These plans have been severely impacted and disrupted by COVID-19. However, the plans will continue after the lockdown.
What happens the weekend that the identified players were supposed to be camped, that's when the government announced the official lockdown of the country due to the COVID-19. So, and then we put that plan on a hold. So what we did, we had to resort to talking to the parents that the plan will be on the hold till we know a way out of this COVID-19.
He went on to say that to ensure the players do not lose out competitively, the academy has an online platform where they communicate and give the players training programs on 1 hour daily and 6 days a week. There are coaches who monitor the players' training and collate reports from the players' parents and the players. He went on to say they are working on the welfare of the players and their mental strength.
Again, for now, we are working on their mental health, their well-being, their welfare, monitor, and to make sure we motivate them by using the forum adequately.
Mane also said the management of the academy and the CEO advised the players to do sports with education because there has to be life after football. Life after football is very important, and junior players must prepare to think of life after football.
The time of Usain Njai, the Hawks CEO and a former Gambia Commercial and Development Bank manager, he used to always quote, "It is important that you pursue your education because it's what lasts with you. The game is risky, it's a contact game. You can lose your opportunity at any time. But when you do, you still fall back on what you do." And that's what the CEO, Mr. Jar, encouraged all the time here. That the reason he makes sure that in the contract, we are in a position that we have a database about the kids' education. And in their specialty, in the subject that they do, is more likely to help you to go out of poverty than the game or any profession that you take. Because education will lead you to learn a decent job. And it will learn you to make sure that you contribute meaningfully to the society. And then you become accountable for what you do and you become responsible. So I think the COVID has presented a lot of answers to human existence, but in sport, it also reiterates and reaffirms that we can pursue sport, but let us pursue sport with something else. And I would advise we pursue sport with education.
He also stated that Qtv Football Academy is a registered third division team of the Banjul League with the primary objective of giving their players greater exposure. Mane also said the coronavirus pandemic have affected all aspects of life and it's worldwide and football has been equally affected. Ibrahima remains hopeful that COVID-19 goes away or a vaccine is found sooner than later. Alhaji Ahmad Cham, Qtv News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. We heard from Red Cross and the fire authorities over a dispute about whether Red Cross vehicles on burial duty should pay to cross. The Gambia will soon be ahead of the likes of Germany when it comes to making voting easier for the visually impaired. As the rain season settles in, we went to URR to see how farmers are coping. Bakau Fish Market is being demolished to make way for another. Some vendors are unhappy at the short notice they say they were given to relocate. In international news, Israel and UAE signed a deal some are describing as historic, but everyone's happy about it. And Namibia's government rejects a cash offer from Germany regarding atrocities in the country when Germany was the occupying power. We asked, is it about more than the money? In sports news, the sports manager and head of football academy at Q City told QTV about how COVID-19 has impacted the academy's plans. That's all we have for you in this bulletin. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.